Let's discuss with Republican Congressman Jason Lewis of the great state of Minnesota. He's on the House Budget Committee. It's nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Poppy.
So let's begin with this. You're on the House side, to be clear, but on the Senate side, the only cuts that they make permanent, as you know, are the corporate tax cuts.
Right.
If that is in the final legislation that you guys end up voting on after today, could you vote for something where all of the tax cuts on the lower brackets, middle class, all individual Americans sunset, but the corporate tax cuts are there forever?
Sure. Well, 10 years is a long time, so there's plenty of time for legislation to correct some of that, and I think that was the origin of Senator Johnson's concern. So it is a problem. I think all the cuts ought to be permanent. We're sort of hamstrung by some of the reconciliation rules there, so they're looking for new revenue to make certain that. But I'm certainly in favor of making all of them permanent.
Oh, and you wouldn't vote for something that just makes the corporate cuts permanent, nothing else,
No, I'm
right?
not going to. I'll reserve my vote when we see the final bill that comes out of conference. This is a holistic approach. This is a big deal. The last time, I mean, if you take a look at when we've cut taxes in the past, in the 1920s with Andrew Mellon, the economy took off in the 20s. JFK in the 1960s, the economy took off. We balanced the budget in 69. Reagan in 86, the economy took off. We balanced the budget in 1998. The point of this is not an individual provision. The point of this is economic growth and a rising tide, which will make up for a lot of that revenue.
Sure, but you also saw the deficit balloon in many of those examples, and you guys as Republicans don't want to see that. But let's move on to your district. You represent the 2nd District of Minnesota. You've got some big corporations headquartered there. You've got Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota's in your district. You've got 3M, a huge, multinational company in your district. And Gary Cohn, the White House chief economic advisor, said the CEOs, the big CEOs, are going to like this the most, and that is fine if it trickles down to the workers there, right? If it means higher pay, if it means more cash in their pocket. Just let me finish the question. It's fine if it means more jobs. My question to you is, can you guarantee your constituents that the benefit to those companies is going to trickle down to them?
Well, of course. I mean, do bankrupt corporations hire more people? Usually, profit is a prerequisite. Poppy, let me finish. Usually, corporations that are profitable hire more people. We have the highest corporate in the industrialized world, the highest corporate rate at 35%. It's actually higher than that in Minnesota because we have a very aggressive income tax there. Oh, why wouldn't you want to lower that so we can compete abroad and repatriate $2.5 to $3 trillion back home?
I hear you. Are you saying that 3M right now is not profitable and you're at risk of losing 3M being headquartered in Minnesota if this doesn't happen?
Yep. I'm saying that companies like Medtronic out of the Twin Cities did a double Irish. That's not a drain anymore. That's when you move abroad for a tax strategy. We don't want more of that. We don't want $2.5 trillion sitting offshore because when that money comes back, we're the only country to tax it twice. We want that money invested in Minnesota in the 2nd District.
We do, but here's what I'm asking you. I'm not asking if they should have a tax cut. What I'm asking you is should there be some limits on it? Because of the examples of what we saw, the tax holiday in 2004, that money didn't go back in reinvesting, didn't go back into more jobs. It went back to dividends and share buybacks. What I'm asking you is, can you guarantee, or do you want some guarantees on this, that a lot of this tax saving is going to go down to the workers?
Well, no, of course you can't guarantee anything, and I can't guarantee that a tax increase will balance the budget. It clearly hasn't. If spending and tax increases could balance budgets, we'd be an economic juggernaut. We have been growing at 2% for a decade. Just now, we're starting to grow faster because the markets have baked in tax reform. The danger here for the economy is if we don't get something done this month, or next month, I should say. Yeah.
Are you worried? So let me ask you this way. Are you worried that it may not trickle down to your constituents that need it the most?
No, because if you look at the history of this tax reduction and simplification, whether, as I say, in the 20s, the 60s, or the 80s, it has always trickled down. We have median family incomes now stagnated for the last 10 years, and we've been spending and taxing like nobody's business. We need to try a different approach, and that's what we're doing here.
Okay, as you know,
and by the way, I mean, the standard deduction of doubling from $12,000 to $24,000 for a family of 4 will more than take care of any itemized deductions that we repeal in order to get lower rates. So I don't want to preserve these carve-outs for the well-to-do and hold middle-class tax cuts hostage to them.
Let me ask you about the concerns of your fellow Republican, Susan Collins. And one of her big concerns is that if you do on the Senate side what they're talking about doing, which is wrapping up repealing the individual mandate from Obamacare, this, that would mean, according to the CBO, 13 million fewer Americans with health coverage in a decade. Yes, because many of them wouldn't buy it. But if they don't buy it, those younger, healthier people, that means premiums go up 10%, and that negates the middle-class tax savings. Are you worried about that?
Well, let's just see what happens coming out of the Senate bills. You know, it's got to come out of finance, get marked up there, then go to conference. In a perfect world, that probably wouldn't be in there. They're looking for money on the other side. I like our House bill, frankly. I'm going to vote for that in a few hours here. Excited to do that. So hopefully we get a bill that's close to that.
Are you concerned with, in your neighboring state, the state of Wisconsin, Republican Senator Ron Johnson says he's a no right now because he feels like, you know, you also have Red Wing Shoes, for example, in your district. He feels like companies like that, these pass-through corporations, wouldn't get as much of a tax cut. And they wouldn't right now in the current legislation on the Senate side as the big corporations. Does that bother you that they would be paying a bit higher rate?
If you take an LLC or sole proprietorship from 39.6 to 25 max, and actually 9% for most of them, that's a pretty substantial cut of 40%. I am concerned that we don't make the individual cuts, and these pass-through companies file on their individual returns. We don't make those permanent. I think they ought to be permanent as well.